On the show this week, we're talking with Bellaria Jimenez, the president of Barnum Tri-State, one of the largest financial service firms in New Jersey with offices in New York and Pennsylvania as well. Let's get into it. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right. Well, Belle, welcome to the show. You know, when I think of small steps, big wins, I'm really excited because, getting to know you, probably over the last 20 years, it's been so amazing to watch your journey. And then for Tri-State to come to Barnum and us to come together and see you leading and what you've accomplished over the last 4 or 5 years, coming off some tough times when, it was right around COVID when this happened. And I always say that there was a lot of bad, but there was a lot of good that happened. And one of the goods was, partnering up with you and your team and starting to work together. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Paul. I am so excited to be here with you and with your audience. And I hope that I can contribute something that will help them be able to get even better.
You will 100%. So let's start out with just the beginning. How did you come into the financial service industry? So we just set the tone for everybody of, where you've been and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Well, I will tell you that it's a bit of a different kind of journey. I did not set off to be a financial planner. When I went back to college after taking a year off from high school, I thought, well, what should I study? And it just made a little bit more sense to me to go into international business. I thought that, using my second language and being able to kind of utilize my skills in that area would be better. But as I started studying and realizing that I really was enjoying the finance courses, that really started opening up a whole new opportunity for me to explore a new profession. Also, the funny story there is that my father had to get me a beat up car to be able to get to school. Mm-hmm. So it only had an AM radio, and every day I could only hear one station, and it was a financial station. And every day, all I heard was mutual funds, stocks, bonds, CDs. And I was like, what is all this stuff? Like, what does this mean? And I just started listening to it. And I think I really it grew with me just to say, okay, maybe I need to pay more attention to this. And it became, such a fun thing to explore and say, I want to be able to understand what all those words mean and how it could change my personal life and those that I helped.
Wow, that's amazing. I wonder if your dad has a subliminal message there of giving you the one station, not like 770 where you heard music. Good for you. I remember myself getting that car, similar car to start in this business. So it's kind of funny to hear that story. So then you started out as a financial advisor before you went into leadership, correct?
Correct. So when I became a financial advisor, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I will say that my first thought is, okay, I want to help people. I want to be able to be a financial planner, sit in front of someone, guide them. But I completely missed the step of you need to acquire clients first. So that piece was a little shocking when I realized that prospecting was like 90% of my work in the first 4 years. And I was very shy, an only child. I definitely was out of my comfort zone. And I think that's when I discovered the first part of my personality is that I am very persistent. And when something is a challenge, I don't back away from it. I just say, okay, how can I get better? And what can I do to be able to tackle this new challenge?
Well, it's interesting to say that because I would say that's something that has really happened to you. And I've watched you do that in all parts of your career. So let's fast forward real quick. So you do the advisor thing, then you go into leadership, and you started out as a sales manager first before you became, a CEO/MD.
Yeah, so that journey also took a couple of different turns. I always say leadership picked me. I didn't pick leadership, but I always had people at my desk asking me questions, asking me, where do I get this? Where do I do that? Can you go with me on an appointment? Do you mind prospecting with me? And that really became part of like who I was in the office. I was that person that was just always willing to help. And I also found that opportunity to be more rewarding because I never wanted to do anything alone. I knew how difficult it was to prospect. Prospecting in a team was just a lot more comforting. But I also realized early on that I did really enjoy professional development, and I was studying. I would get a group together and said, let's study together, let's learn together. And it was just became part of like my own personality. So as we fast forward, the training director at the time actually started asking me, do you mind sitting in with me in the class, helping me with some of the role playing? And at first I was a little intimidated because I felt lack of confidence. I was so young and so new in the business, but I realized that it was sharpening me because me being there, being able to be a better listener, giving feedback, and at the same time having to also role play made me so much better at my craft. So I realized like, you know what, this is actually the best training I could do. And I just continued to do that. So fast forward a couple of years, I started as a sales manager, but in my sales manager role, it always seemed as if I had to kind of fill different voids in the organization. So there was a time that there was no recruiting director. So I had to step in and run the recruiting team. A time that there was no marketing director and I had to jump in and run the marketing team. There was a time that there was no operations director and I had to jump in and wholeheartedly learn compliance and operations in like one sitting. So every single time I've had that opportunity, it has propelled me forward to just opening up a new part of my leadership style. And I've also had to just confront difficult things. I had at one time, our CFO at the time passed away suddenly, and it was very tragic. But I found myself having to sit at the CFO seat and having to look at payroll for the week and say, oh, wow, I need to figure this out and quickly. So that's been part of my training on demand, as I call it.
Well, it's interesting. And I want to unbundle that for all the listeners here. So the first thing is you had a rotation basically that wasn't planned, but you did this rotation. So you got to see the business from the bottom up. And I think that was, that's amazing. And that shows to me today when I think about yourself and how valuable you are in so many different areas. That's one of the reasons, to hear that. But the part that I think it's really important for all the advisors out there, when you talked about doing the joint work or the joint mentoring or the role playing and, having to be, when you're by yourself, sometimes people don't watch the videos as much. And today, I think as an athlete, I shared this many months ago, but as an athlete, it was always the film day was on Monday, especially with football. And I think advisors don't really do that as much as they could, especially with Zoom today. They could be taping and watching themselves and critiquing. But when you were doing joint work, you knew you had to do and you couldn't, cut corners. So I think as advisors out there, I think one thing you should take away from that is don't be afraid to sit first chair or second chair, even today, the most successful ones, because you'll learn one thing or another. And I had an advisor that's extremely successful tell me recently that he was in a slump. And I said, it could have been one word that you changed. So maybe have someone sit in or, use Zoom AI and tape yourself and then re-listen to it and make a change. So, really good stuff, Val. Thank you for sharing that. Well, you hit on something at the end of that and you talked about leadership. And I know last week you shared with our leadership team here that you're continuing on your journey now, can grow as a leader and continue to educate yourself. So why don't you tell us what's going on and share some of the things that you're learning right now?
Absolutely. Well, so one of the things you just said is so critical. We're either learning or we're teaching. And we always have to be in one of those two seats. And I do want to just address one thing you mentioned, because I do see a lot of new advisors sometimes, and even experienced. They kind of hide in their in a cubicle and they just make their phone calls, but you have to always be able to take feedback because we don't know sometimes the mistakes we're making. And that's a really big part of the growth strategy that I always followed. It's okay. Give me the feedback. I want to continue to learn. Like that's the only way we can do it. So about 2 years ago, I really faced a very difficult part of my career. I just felt that things were just really changing and very rapidly. And those are the stretch moments, right? When we say, okay, what do I do? I've always been I really have always believed that is so important. It's how you handle things or how you react to things, because things are always going to happen to us. So at the time, I put things in place. I put my business plan and my business goal. And when I do my goals, I always have four different things that I always do with my goals every single year. I have a business goal, my family goal, my spiritual goal, and my health goal. And in those goals, they all usually work together in some way. But it was really important for me that December that I thought about what the year was to come and the things that I was trying to accomplish. And I said, if I'm going to set to these goals, I need to continue to improve and grow. And I have learned many things throughout my career, but now I was in a completely different area where I needed to learn more about our profession and how to change things even at a larger scale than just my organization. And that's when I decided to go back to school. And I am now studying for my doctorate in business administration with a focus on leadership. Um, it has been quite a journey it's been now 14 months and nonstop. I haven't taken a single day off. And I will tell you that during that time, I have learned so much about the opportunities that are in our profession to continue to grow and change. So when people ask me, well, how do you see our business and our profession in the future? And I am so optimistic, but I do feel that we are at a tipping point and we need to change. And it's going to take all of us, it's a village, right, to change. There are so many more people living past 100, people going into their retirement years that are over, just not properly ready or prepared. And there are so many people underinsured. I mean, any category that you see, there's opportunities for a financial advisor to help and really influence and impact those lives. But we need to get more financial advisors. And that is really what is lacking in our business is understanding how do we change the way that we bring advisors in to help them be successful and help the ones that are already with us to continue to expand and become blended advisors so they can really make an impact with their clients.
It's interesting you say that. I was away last week traveling and I was thinking, I was actually having a very similar thought to what you're talking about how the opportunity is so amazing. But I really think that the industry has to do a better job of presenting this as a business. You're going into business. You're not going to be a financial advisor. Financial advising is the business, but it is an entrepreneurial opportunity if done professionally and properly. And I don't think we're selling that career like that. And if we don't do that, you're right. And I heard a crazy stat, and I'd like to hear more about how you think you see it getting fixed. But I heard a stat that only 9% of the industry is under the age of 30. So what happens in the next 20 years? So let's dig in a little bit on what you think the opportunity is.
So that is an interesting stat because what I have found in my research is that, many professions start dripping on students very early on when they're still in high school and college is when they start really thinking about what do you want to be when you grow up. And there's just not enough advocates out there talking about what we do. That's really the starting point. There are now more curriculums in college that are starting to talk about financial planning and financial advising throughout the country. There's really no consistency, though, on how that curriculum actually runs. And it really runs differently in every college. And some it may be in the business department and some it may be in economics. So I think that is something that could be looked at and addressed. But overall, I think part of what people think about a profession is that we earn commissions. And a lot of people still have a difficult time understanding how to really properly position that. And especially someone that goes to college, spends all this money going to college, and then goes home and says, hey, mom and dad, I just got a job. What's your salary? 0. And what's your potential to earn? Limitless. It's a little abstract. And I think we need to do a better job in helping them understand how entrepreneurs can really do well. There is a lot more, I think, movement and excitement about like the gig economy where people are more entrepreneurial. So I really feel like we're at the right point where we can sell our career a little bit better, but we need to do a better job with that. And we're not. I also think that when I look at different studies from all over the world, Financial advisors all have the same challenges. They come into this profession and they have to wear so many different hats that they get so confused what they should be focusing on in those first 4 years. So in one aspect, they're trying to get licensed and trying to get an understanding of what they need to do with their clients. But then in another aspect, they're trying to understand how to process their paperwork and do the administrative function, how to run an illustration and learn all of the tools for CRM, how to do their marketing and be able to brand themselves. There's so many different parts. It gets so complicated. I think we need to, as leaders, simplify that for people that come in so we can help them stay really focused on what's important for them to learn and know in those first 4 years so they can really build a true practice.
Yeah, I agree. And as you're sitting here, talking this, my mind is obviously going in so many directions to how do we execute on this? But I do think that if you can take what you said, right, it's a business. And when they go home to their parents, if you are opening up a business, you're spending a ton of money to get started to make zero to start. And here, you're going to make money way faster and grow your business way quicker. And the startup cost is very minimal compared to a regular business. The other thing, though, I think the top advisors in our industry, when you think about people living longer, people are going to work longer too, especially if they, when you think of your four goals, your fourth one they set was health. If people, treat themselves as corporate athletes and take care of themselves, they're going to work way longer. And I know that you spent a lot of time on your journey to get here on teaming, but is there an opportunity for young advisors and for top advisors to really scale their practices and grow into from, a little boutique business to more of a distribution channel and really, really build that practice and get that young talent and help, straight line that versus the ups and downs with that. So is that part of your studies too?
Absolutely. So, when you think about bringing in, it's recruiting and retention, right? It's two parts of the equation. And what happens is that the retention piece also comes from the financial advisors that are in the business. And it does require a little bit of a mind change because they have to realize that they are aging, and everybody that you ask that's in this profession, they love it. They want to be here forever. They don't want to ever retire. But the reality is that it's more about not just succession planning, but it's how do you really grow your practice so that you can leave a legacy for that next generation and be able to really truly help your clients. I mean, the stats, Paul, that, when clients pass away, the advisor usually doesn't inherit the money from that client because they don't have that relationship built with that next generation. So there's so much opportunity when you bring in a new advisor into your practice to be able to capture assets for the next generation, but also to expand. I really, truly believe that our business is getting more complicated, and we can only really have like one or two specializations. So we need to have a team of people around us that are supporting our clients in different ways. So that's another opportunity to bring in talent. And I think in succession planning, many people always think that they have to hire someone that's just like them. But I actually think that we have to hire someone sometimes that complements us, right? That's a little different and unique.
I agree. And I think that's there is some opportunities in cloning, right? In the beginning, but then long term, I think being functional and having people around you that are more functional, and especially the things that you don't like to do or you're not good at, right? Versus trying to think, growing up as an athlete, you never take an athlete that's really good at one of these things and say, go figure out how to do this when you have other people on the team that do that. And I think if we can get that in business and more specialized, it's more fun. And as you grow, I think when you use the word succession planning, I think it's important that some of the things you said you did early on in your career, like role playing and, learning different skill sets, you might not want to do when you get older in the industry. And that's where you can have people on your team that are doing those things. So you have more fun and stay more stimulated.
Absolutely. So true.
What are some of the things on a leadership? So it sounds like a part of the journey that you're learning is how to lead through the change of the industry. But let's go back to, was there any other findings other than how many, I know it's probably, is it over like, it used to be like 50,000 people were over 100. Is it like a couple of 100,000 now that are over 100, or where is that number going?
So I don't have the statistics in front of me, but it is growing. And it's interesting because when I started trying to really focus on what aspect of our business I was trying to solve, right? What problem, there were so many different ways that I looked at this problem. I first looked at it from the long term care perspective. So many people are aging, and it is really interesting. We're in a different time than we've ever been. So many people are retiring now without being married or without having children. And that means that they are going into a different type of retirement that never existed before, where their family was their first group of people that would support them and help them in that aging group. But now when you put into that, Paul, the fact that we're living so much longer, going into our hundreds, and financially, it's not sustainable. It's so expensive. And there's so many long-term care companies that haven't been able to maintain those products on the shelf. It's just too expensive. But when I look at the problem and I peeled back, it said the problem stems from that we need to have people to educate those individuals to be able to get to that retirement journey. So it always goes back to the financial advisor. And that's why I really focused more on recruiting and retention, because without the financial advisor, those problems will never be solved. We can't really say that there's going to be a new government policy that's going to help, or a new company is going to come out and have a new product solution. That world gets so complicated. At the end of the day, what we need is more financial advisors to guide people to making the right decisions. And that goes back to expanding your teams, being able to reach more people. And that, I think, is where the true opportunity is.
Yeah, it's very interesting when I think of and I say this literally every show, but the bad of COVID, I said it earlier, but now the reach, when you look at Barnum's become a national firm and a national brand over the last 5 years. It was more regionalized, some national footprint, but it's getting bigger and bigger. So the reach is greater due to technology. But you're right. What you're finding is advisors are not scaling their practices fast enough. And when you look at the retention and the recruiting, they should be thinking about that and really become good talent scouts. Is that kind of what you learned too?
I've been learning that. I've also been learning, as you said, how do you expand your efficiencies? And AI is going to be a very important part of that scaling. But there's still a lot of confusion as to how to use AI the right way, and how financial advisors can use it to complement their business and build efficiencies versus the original mindset of, oh, AI is going to replace me. We need individuals to help individuals. AI is not going to fill that void, but it could be helpful. It could take away some of the busy work that I mentioned earlier on, some of the administrative functions that took up a lot of the advisor's time. So I think there's a great way for us to be able to become more open to how this new technology could help and not be afraid of it. And I think that because we have an aging industry, our financial professionals that are getting older get a little resistant to the technology. But post-COVID, we had to really take a look at that difference of technology. I mean, if you're not embracing technology, you're not going to be able to be in the business. So that's another great opportunity for partnering. You should still be able to use your intellectual capital, even if technology is a bit of a problem for you at this time, being able to partner with someone that can use that technology to help you move forward.
Well, it's interesting when you think of the role of the financial advisor, it's just evolved so much in terms of all the responsibilities. But, I'm dating myself a little bit. When I was originally starting, the first thing we were trying to get advisors to do in the word scale was to hire a full-time staff person, right? To help them maybe with just paperwork. And if you think about that, the object was to become this financial doctor. And so that you just see patients all day or see clients all day. And as you continue to fast forward here, we're probably not going to make up the gap of the amount of advisors needed for the demand in the products. But if they can get little wins with AI and scaling, they can see way more clients and continue to help solve some of those needs. Is that kind of where your mindset's at? It sounds like that's where your mindset's going.
Yes, I mean, I think we've seen it in so many different ways. We've even seen that change in marketing. This has become a relationship business. People are looking to build relationships. And I think when I started in the business, it was more of a transactional type of approach. So that's one huge change. So when you think about building relationships, there is only so many people you can work with, because then you are not really building deep rooted relationships. But I also think that's where the opportunity is to expand, to get more advisors to be able to help fill that void. AI will come in. There will always be people that are just going to buy things because it's quick and easy. But we're looking to work with the people that really need our help. And they're going to be able to need to have that relationship building process. I also feel that as the more I read, and I did want to make this point because sometimes people ask, well, what's the right leadership style? What should I be focusing on? The one thing I have really learned in this journey is that there's no perfect leader. There's nobody has the right formula. There's so many styles, and you sometimes are surprised which style will work. So I really think that once again, it goes back to being a relationship business. What I would challenge anyone listening, if you're an advisor or a leader, is that you can't stop growing. Like that, I think, is the biggest fault for any leader that I've read that has had, their company close or anything like that, is they just stopped learning. They stopped listening. They stopped collaborating. So that's something that's so important. And it works the same for our financial professionals. Our financial advisors need to embrace the change and say, how can I move forward and really help my clients? And I think with the relationship side, even in the marketing touch points we see now, we see that more of the marketing touch points, even with podcasts and everything, it's about connecting one-on-one with people rather than like trying to sell them something. So those are some of the changes that I think are subtly happening, but we have to be really aware of that and how we can be more in tune with what our clients are looking for.
Well, it's interesting when I continue to think of my purpose, and I feel like I landed in this spot for a reason, and it's to impact as many lives as possible, right? And I always struggled in the beginning when I left the field as an advisor to go into leadership. I was always nervous that I wasn't doing that, but now I get to do it even bigger because there's lots of advisors that I'm leading that are out there doing that. But I think if we can get that across to the advisor community and get them to understand that if they can spend all their time there and continue to build around them an organization that helps them do what they're really good at and building those deep relationships. And you're right, there's no real number. Some advisors might say, I have 1,000 clients, or some might say I only could handle 200. I think that's individualized, but I think people have to understand that. And now on this journey, how can everyone help you on this journey to get this message out though? Have you?
Wow. I have not thought that far. I haven't had enough time to think through that piece. What I will tell you is going back to what you said about teaming. I truly believe that teaming has so much value in so many different ways. One way is, in the financial advisor world, it's being able to have that team around you that's going to help you grow, expand, learn, but also support you in the practice. For myself, when I look at this journey and trying to learn and get the word out there, I am going to rely on my team to help me find the solutions on how to do that. I've always described my style of leadership, and this is why I went through this journey, is I was always the doer, the fixer behind the scenes. Give me the problem, I'll fix it. Now my role has shifted to being more in the front line and being able to be in front with people and helping them. And I love coaching. I love teaching. I love mentoring. When it's one-on-one, when it comes to groups, that's where I still want to continue to grow and develop. But as I mentioned before, the one thing that has put my mind at ease is that there are so many different types of leaders out there. And it's great. There's not one type that is highly successful. You can point to faults in everybody. Even, so many people always point to Jobs and his transformational leadership style. But Steve also got fired from his own job because of his style being a little bit maybe too aggressive and not collaborative. So every single way that we can look at a leader, we can always point to their faults. So I feel like we always have to just focus on how do we keep moving forward with what our strengths are and how to continue to really make a change. My goal in this journey is not only for professional development, but it really is to move our profession forward. I feel so strongly that we're like at that tipping point where we can truly, as a team, come together and say, how do we change the narrative so that people can understand the wonders about this profession, that it's not as scary as it seems when we first start, because we do have a team of people supporting us. And how do we use AI to take away some of that busy work that sometimes does distract our new advisors, where they're just not really progressing and growing because they are so concerned about non-income producing activities that are not really helping them. There's just so much opportunity, Paul, that I really hope that I can have a group of people around me that say, how do we take this information now and let's work with it and let's really make a difference and change our profession.
Well, you already started by doing this today, and I can't thank you enough for sharing. And I think I don't want to lose sight of, and maybe for our next time that we speak, we'll talk about how you added 20 hours to your weekly schedule over the last 13, 14 months when we talk about capacity, right? And how people are able to expand. So I'm really proud of you for doing that. And the industry needs more people doing what you're doing. So thank you, Belle. But what I would say is the last point that you just made is a critical one, right? There is no perfect entrepreneur. There is no perfect leader. And I think for the people listening today, for the advisors, take this message and think about when you think of the demographics and the transfer of wealth that's going on, this is the greatest time to be in this industry. And for the people that are here now, start taking advantage and do these things. And if you're listening today, go back and re-listen to understand and lay out as Belle, it was, you made it very simple in the beginning where you talked about your 4 buckets. But I think as you build your goals, expand and just remember the impact you can make on people's lives. So, Belle, listen, this is going back to school was, I'll say it wasn't a small step; it was a big one. But you're winning every day, and I've watched you grow as a leader. So, thank you for what you're doing, and the industry will thank you too. So, thank you again, and I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Well, this is Paul Blanco. It's Small Steps, Big Wins. And make sure you listen and please share on Apple and Spotify with your friends. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.